wanted to talk today about having a niche in your small business and why I think now that that's important. I wanted to talk about it because I think I was actually quite resistant. Even though I kept hearing like you need a niche, it's really important to have a niche. I think I was just a bit resistant, like, and in denial about it. Anyway, I did end up finding a niche and everything, my whole idea has changed about it. I did realise why and how it's important. And so I was just going to talk a bit about my experiences and how it kind of changed things for me. By the way, if you're new here, I'm Anna. I started a little craft business a couple of years ago, upcycling bags. This is just me talking about what I'm learning along the way, really. So today, everything I've learned about the importance of really having a strong niche. Okay, so yeah, at the beginning I was kind of selling or trying to sell everything under the sun, really. I kind of had two starts to my business, really. There was the accidental kind of me selling face masks on Etsy during the lockdown, but I didn't have a business name or anything yet. I hadn't started Parrot and Parsnip, which is my bag business. It was very much just a me starting to sell bits and bobs on Etsy, but it's kind of where everything stemmed from. But that was obviously quite random. I was just under the impression that if you had loads of different things that you were selling, say, let's say hair scrunchies, cushions, wax sandwich wraps. I even had like these weird science Pyrex glass vasey things that my partner had acquired. If someone was coming across one of these things, then they'll end up looking at the rest of your shop and seeing what else was on it. And I thought that, so obviously the more variation of stuff you have, the more people you'd reach through them, you know, and be able to get more people and more eyes on. Really, that's not the way people shop for a start. They don't just kind of set out to buy anything and anything online. But also the main thing obviously is that it's just really confusing for any algorithm to try and place you in a category when you're like that. So you're not in anything really. And if you only have one item within a certain category, you're just not going to be shown in that category anyway. So it was a bit of a pointless, thing, and I was definitely wrong. And it was funny, really. Then when I started Parrot and Parsnip, I did actually have the idea that I was only going to sell and make these drawstring bags because I'd made one for myself. I really liked it. And I thought, these are going to fly off the shelf. So actually, I started with it going to be like ridiculously niche, literally just one item. Because of other aspects, mainly that I just didn't have a clue what I was doing. Obviously, I listed these. They didn't get any views or anything on Etsy. I then started to be like, oh, I'll put these hair scrunchies that I have from when I was previously making random stuff. And these things I just was like, oh, I need to have a lot more listings. So I just kept adding all these old stuff, Christmas cards, I think. In actual fact, the hair scrunchies, bit by bit, started selling. And then I kind of felt compelled to make more different hair scrunchies and hair bands and stuff, and these things actually were like the only things that sold at my shop. And I did realise one day that it actually said my shop category was hair accessories, even though I was really still hoping to sell these bags, these drawstring bags. I can't remember the pinpointal moment of deciding that I was going to do bags and really focus on that. I think it was like realising that I was in the hair category. Anyway, so at this point I decided to really niche down to just doing bags. I think as well I'd made a bum bag and I really liked it, and I was starting to enjoy the process of experimenting with different bags. So what I did was, firstly on Etsy, I removed all listings that didn't have anything to do with bags, all of my hair scrunchies and anything else random I had on there. And then went on kind of my Instagram, and I was trying to do Pinterest at the time as well. That's kind of fallen flat. Any of my bios as well on Etsy that described what I was doing and made sure it was clear that I was making bags out of upcycled fabrics. Just went around trying to really clear everything up and make it really clear as to what I was doing. I also went through, and this might seem a bit like excessive, but I went through everyone that I followed on Instagram, because my Instagram was all over the place as well. I went through my follower list and deleted or like unfollowed anyone who wasn't relevant to what I was doing. So you know when you first join Instagram and it says, oh, add all these people to gain more followers, and you just kind of add whoever they suggest to add. Anyone who I didn't recognize who they were, anyone who was just so unrelated to what I was doing. It did feel a bit weird because obviously at the time I wasn't doing very well on Instagram, so I felt really harsh, like unfollowing anyone. But it just really cleared up and showed Instagram, like, look, these are the kind of people I want to be in the same community with. So they were people who were upcycling. Obviously, if I'd met people at markets and I knew that most of them wasn't going to unfollow, I wasn't like that hardcore. But I think it just helped clear everything up a bit. And then also going from then on, like adding people, searching out people who were doing similar things to what I wanted to do and just adding them. And so making that all quite clear as to where I wanted to be put within all of these categories and communities and stuff. Just kind of really trying to send clear signals to all the algorithms as to where I wanted to be placed. So really what I'd done at this point is done like a kind of big declutter, and I did have that feeling as if you'd done like a declutter, say of your wardrobe or whatever, where everything just feels a lot more clearer and you feel like you can think a bit more and focus. So I did have that, I do remember that feeling of being like, yes, like I know where I'm going now, I know what I want to do, and everything felt a lot clearer. So that was good. Like I felt a bit more excited rather than, I guess I was just so cluttered and I was always before thinking, oh, I could make this, and then like going to make it and, oh, I could make that, and you know, all of that kind of jazz. Anyway, from this point on, I then started to realise all the important things actually and why it's so important to have a niche. One big one is that it does make you look just so much more professional, and I'm becoming to think more and more all the time that what you really want to do is you don't need to look, I think we always get it the wrong way around in terms of looking professional. Like we ourselves try and act and look professional, and maybe even if the product doesn't look so much, but really what we need to do is make our product and what we're selling, trying to sell, look really professional. And then we can just be ourselves, you know, because we are just people making things and trying to sell them. And there's nothing wrong with that, especially if your product is really good. And it'll only really look professional if it's focused on one thing. So, you know, now if I was to see the kind of thing what I used to do, which was to make, you know, a baby bib and then this and a that and that does just look like a bit of someone trying out different crafts in their spare time and stuff, which is fine, but that doesn't really look like a business. Whereas someone focused on just making one specific thing, it just looks so much better. I also think it really allows you to find your audience much quicker than you would do if you were making random things. And so this is because the way the kind of algorithm would work, for example, is let's say you make crocheted tea cozies like in the shape of animals, which is obviously quite niche. And then let's say you do an Instagram post about this and you put it out and you make it quite clear that your post is about crocheted tea cozies in the shape of animals. And let's say there's someone called Mary who often looks at tea cozies and crocheted things on Instagram. So the algorithm's going to say, okay, well, this is a crocheted thing, so I'm going to show it to Mary. And then, of course, because Mary's quite interested in this kind of thing, she's going to react to that. And then the algorithm will say, okay, well, Mary liked that. So, and Mary follows these other accounts to do with crocheted animals or tea cozies. So therefore, I'm going to show this post now to some other people who also follow the same accounts as Mary. And they're quite likely to like what you're doing because they already follow the same kind of thing. So it'll kind of go on from there. It'll be quite easy for the algorithm to decipher what kind of people are going to be interested in if it keeps going in that kind of direction. But let's say you do that 1 week and then the next week you've done a watercolour greeting card. Mary may well not be interested in that as the other people, you know? Therefore, it's either going to deem that post as not interesting because none of your people who liked your previous post liked it, or it may try and find another person who likes this watercolour. Okay, and then it starts the whole thing again. but then you go back and you do a pair of stripy knitted socks, it starts the whole process again. So you see, it's just, the algorithm's just going to get so confused, as are the people who are following your account, because they thought they were going to follow to see some tea cozies in the shape of animals, but now they're being shown kind of anything and everything that you've decided to try hand at that week. It does seem a bit counterintuitive. You think, God, surely if I do a wide range of things, a wide range of people would see it. But that's not actually what you want. You want to do a very, very niche thing and let these people find you and keep finding you, because you keep doing the same thing, and therefore you'll grow an audience of interested people, and much quicker than you would do otherwise. I think another really important thing as well is, if you were to focus on just one thing, it makes you perfect that craft much quicker. And that's where you want to get. You want to get to a level of being seen as a bit of an expert in this one thing that you're doing. And you'll only be seen as that if you are always doing the same thing. So you're always making like wooden bowls. When I actually started and I was going to make these drawstring bags, in my head, my kind of like a bit of my business plan, as it were, was, surprisingly enough, because it's changed quite a lot, but make things that were quick and easy to make. That's what I wanted to do, because otherwise I was a bit worried about how I was ever going to make money from it, I think. And therefore I kind of stayed away from making anything slightly complicated. I'd never made bags before. Like, my job before was sewing, but it was clothes, costumes and stuff like that. So bags was quite new to me, and I was just starting with a drawstring bag, which wasn't, to be honest, like, it was extremely easy to make. When you're making a lot of things, like, you can't spend ages making things, because you've kind of got that thing of, I need it to be quick in order to make a profit. But in actual fact, what I think you want to do is find something that you really like and you can really put your all into, and focus on reaching your highest potential that you can in that. That's what's going to set you aside from other people. Make what you're doing much more interesting, and make it much more interesting for you as well, because you're really pushing yourself. Like, when I started, first I made it, you know, I branched out to a bum bag and then side bag, and then started making backpacks, and before I knew it, I was just really trying to push myself to make the best bags I could make, which actually is much more fun, much more rewarding. It's much more interesting for other people to see as well, because not many people have the time to do this kind of thing that we're all trying to do. So it's just much more interesting all around, and it allows you to find your best products as well, because only by kind of experimenting within that niche are you going to hit upon something that really kind of is good for you and is different and perhaps no one else is doing. So those are the reasons I think it's just really important to have a niche, really. I think a reason why a few of us are still a bit resilient towards it is because we think, oh my gosh, I don't want to just make one thing and make that one thing for the rest of my life. But it's not really like that. In actual fact, if you start small, it will allow you to grow a lot quicker, which will then allow you to introduce different variations of what you do and introduce different kinds of things as the more and more you grow. For example, like, if you take a big brand, I don't know, like Adidas, they would have started off just making running shoes, probably. I haven't researched this, but I'm presuming. You know, and then it would have branched out into, and it would have been like running gear and stuff like that. And then slowly, as they get bigger, it branches out into more loungewear, more fashion kind of clothes. It's all within the same like style, very recognizable as Adidas. Like, they probably got a pencil case out, but it would be like black and sporty with 3 stripes. It wouldn't be, you know, pretty floral. Like, another one I keep talking about for some reason, I think people keep mentioning it to me, so it's always in my head, but Lucy and Yak, a very recent brand, which started off purely with dungarees, only sold dungarees, and then as they grow and grow, they introduced trousers, tops, bags. So whereas like I had tried to start with everything and then niche down to one thing, really what you want to do is like start with one thing and then gradually, because it will be so much easier to grow with that. If you want to introduce more things over time, you can, and that's quite good because it inserts a little bit of newness and a little bit of new energy and new excitement into your brand every now and then. But very much you'll have developed such a strong style of what you do if you've started with just kind of starting one thing. you'll have developed a really strong, recognizable style that's yours, which then you can like pass on to whatever new thing it is that you're introducing. So it's all very recognizable to you. So yeah, that's my experience anyway with developing a niche. I do have to say that just made me feel a lot clearer, a lot better. And I would say it's definitely helped to build my brand. Like, for example, actually, I did notice that when other people mentioned me saying their stories, you know how sometimes people can say, like, recommend shopping from these small businesses for Christmas or whatever. If people had mentioned me, they would always say, this is Anna from Power and Passive and she makes tapestry backpacks. I wasn't really aware because I make bags out of all different vintage fabrics, but that was very much a niche that I'd created for myself, and they were popular, so therefore that had kind of created into a niche. And so that kind of suggests that people are much more likely to talk about you if they have a very clear sense of what you do. So that's another thing. Anyway, so I hope that if you were kind of a bit resilient or a bit resistant to resilient I hope that if you were kind of a bit resistant to kind of knuckling down on one thing, you didn't kind of want to cast everything away that you were working on, or you couldn't really pick, like, hope that I've been able to convince you a little bit, because I really do think if you're serious about making your business from whatever craft it is that you do, like, I think it's very necessary. Just focus on that one thing. All right then, I'd love to hear if you've got any experiences. I feel like in a way like I was the last person to kind of catch on to the niche thing, because everyone I see always seems to be really like organised and like have their own niche kind of on Instagram. But I guess that's because you don't get shown the people who don't, because it's harder for them to, you know, find their audience and that. So may be the case, may not. Anyway, thanks for watching and I'll see you soon. Bye.